They said I shot an unarmed man. They forged the footage, planted my gun, and rewrote the report because I was black and I was rising. But they forgot one thing. You don't bury a man like me. You sharpen him. And I made sure every one of them paid. You ever walk into a room and feel like the walls themselves are watching you? That's what it felt like every single morning I stepped into Precinct 87. You could smell the tension, like sweat and rust and secrets, and feel the eyes that slid off you the moment they realized you weren't the guy they expected to wear the badge. I'm Officer Darius Cole, 34 years old, black, born and raised in DC, 7 years on the force. No disciplinary marks. Commendation for bravery. Community Engagement Award. And somehow, I was still just the diversity guy to half the damn department. I joined the force to make a difference, naive enough to believe that a good man in a broken system could still do good. I learned quickly that being black and being a cop wasn't enough. I had to be better, cleaner, smarter, calmer, always calm. One angry outburst, and I'd be labeled aggressive. One slip-up, and I'd be affirmative action gone wrong. So I worked harder than everyone. Worked longer. Took every extra shift. Defused more situations than I can count. Talked a kid out of suicide with nothing but my voice and a warm sandwich from the corner deli. I thought that would be enough. I was wrong. It started with jokes. Turner always had them. Careful, Cole. You're getting too good. Might make us all look lazy. He'd laugh. They'd laugh. I'd fake a smile. Because what else could I do? But it escalated. My locker got tagged with a Sharpie. Rat. My tires got slashed. Twice. Someone left fried chicken bones in my mailbox. I reported it. The captain told me to keep the peace. Then I made the mistake of thriving. I passed my detective exam. Word started going around that I was in line for a promotion, lieutenant, maybe. I was the youngest black officer in precinct history to make that rank. 3 weeks later, I got the call. Shots fired. Officer down. Code 20. Warehouse 47. Suspect armed. It was pouring that night. Streets slick with oil and rain. The kind of night that makes bad things happen. I radioed in and got there fast. Too fast. Warehouse 47 sat at the edge of the docks, half abandoned, half forgotten. I parked, drew my sidearm, and stepped into silence. Then I saw the body. Face down, in a pool of blood. Uniform torn. Officer Jennings. I dropped to one knee, checked vitals. Gone. Chest wound. No sign of the shooter. I called it in. Secured the scene. Then something caught my eye. A 9mm Glock. Identical to mine. I picked it up with gloves. No blood. No prints. No casing nearby. Weird. By the time backup arrived, the scene was already wrong. The first 2 officers didn't talk to me. They pulled me aside, cuffed me, and read my rights. No questions. No briefing. They said I shot him. They said my gun was the one found. They said I didn't turn on my body cam. They said my gloves had GSR. I knew instantly, this was a setup. I demanded the body cam footage be reviewed. I knew I turned it on. But somehow, the file was corrupted. The weapon? Registered to me. But I just cleaned and logged it the night before. Then I found out who logged the evidence. Sergeant Mike Turner. The same man who once told me, "We don't protect people like you, Cole. You're on your own." Internal Affairs suspended me pending review. My name leaked to the press before I even made it home. I was painted as a cop killer in less than 24 hours. I lost everything. Colleagues stopped returning my texts. My girl packed a bag to clear her head. I sat in my apartment, hands shaking, staring at the badge I once wore like a shield. But it was never a shield. Not for me. And when I reviewed the internal logs from the response unit, my stomach dropped. Because the name at the top, the one who arrived before I did, the one who had access to the scene before cameras were activated, was Sergeant Mike Turner. And that's when I knew I wasn't just fighting for my job. I was fighting for my life. The realization hit harder than any punch I'd taken on the streets. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't bad luck. This was war, and I was already bleeding. The next few days were a blur of humiliation. They took my badge, my gun, my dignity. The press ran with it. Black cop kills fellow officer during response call. No alleged. No pending investigation. Just guilt. Delivered to every doorstep in the city before sunrise. I couldn't leave my apartment without someone whispering. Some people stared. Others crossed the street. One neighbor, someone I'd once helped during a domestic call, spit at my feet. But nothing hurt more than the silence from my own brothers in blue. Not a single call. Not a single visit. Except for one. Detective Rosa Alvarez. She brought groceries. Wouldn't come in. Too risky for her. But she handed me the bags with eyes that looked sorry. Not guilty. Not suspicious. Just tired. She didn't say much. Just, they've done this before. Be careful, Cole. Then she left. I started pulling at threads. Because I had to. I reviewed the call logs again. Cross-referenced badge IDs. Something didn't sit right. Turner had marked himself on scene for minutes before the 911 call was dispatched. That shouldn't have been possible. Unless he was already there. Unless he staged the scene. Unless Jennings' death was part of a plan, and I was the scapegoat. I submitted an appeal to IA, requested the footage from every traffic camera, CCTV feed, and warehouse security line near the docks that night. 3 days later, I got a letter. Your request has been denied. Reconsider after official investigation concludes. So they were shutting me out. But they didn't know I'd made a copy of the warehouse CCTV logs years ago, back when I helped the local owner set up motion-triggered backups during a theft string. I called in a favor. The guy owed me. He pulled the footage from that night and sent it to me, shaky but clear. I watched it on my laptop. Alone. Heart pounding. 10:32 p.m. Warehouse empty. Rain falling hard. 10:35. A black cruiser pulls in. Not mine. 10:36. Turner steps out. Alone. Enters the building. 10:38. No movement. 10:40. A second cruiser, mine, arrives. But the part that made my stomach twist? 10:39. A muzzle flash inside the warehouse. Before I even arrived, Turner was already there. The shot was fired. Jennings was already dead. And I hadn't even stepped out of my damn car. I took the footage straight to a lawyer. Civil rights attorney. Young guy. Barely 30. But sharp. Hungry. He watched the footage and just said, "Holy sh**t. They're framing you." But I couldn't go public. Not yet. If they were willing to kill a fellow officer, what would they do to a black one they saw as expendable? So I dug deeper. I found something worse. Turner wasn't alone. I started piecing together footage, timestamps, patrol car logs. Crossed them with precinct duty rosters. There was a pattern. Same group of officers. Always responding to high-profile arrests. Always missing body cam footage. Always involved in excessive force complaints that vanished after internal review. And the deeper I went, the more the name came up in whispers. Shield 45. An off-the-books clique. An old boys club with thin blue loyalty and thick white entitlement. They covered each other. Promoted each other. Protected each other. And when someone got in their way, especially someone black, they crushed them. I wasn't the first. Just the most visible. Then they came for me. For real. I got home one night. Door cracked open. Apartment ransacked. Files gone. Laptop smashed. But I was ready. Because what they didn't know, I had backups. And I wasn't just fighting anymore. I was preparing to strike. No more begging for justice from the same machine that tried to grind me into dust. I had something more dangerous than a badge. I had the truth. And I wasn't going to play fair anymore. The break-in didn't scare me. It pissed me off. They didn't just smash my laptop. They tried to erase me. My notes, my copies of the warehouse footage, my printed logs, even the voice memos I'd saved on an old burner. I stood in the wreckage of my living room. Papers torn, drawers dumped, couch slashed, and I made a vow. No more defense. I go on offense. They thought I was alone. They were wrong. I reached out to the only person I knew who might still give a damn about the truth. Detective Maria Elkins. She had retired 3 years earlier, after mysteriously turning down a promotion to captain. Some said it was burnout. Others whispered she'd pissed off the wrong people. I called her. Told her it was urgent. She gave me an address. Quiet diner on the outskirts of town, late night hours only. I found her in a booth, black coffee in hand, eyes sharp as broken glass. "You made it through the first punch," she said, not even waiting for hello. "Now comes the fight." I laid everything out. Turner, the CCTV footage, Shield 45, the setup. I showed her the only remaining copy of the video I had, stored on a secure USB tucked into the lining of my shoe. She didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled out a worn notebook and flipped to a page labeled Shield 45, Unofficial Patterns. Names. Dates. Cases. Suppressed body cam footage. Mysterious internal decisions. She'd been tracking them for years. "I didn't have enough to blow it open," she said. "They made sure of that. But you? You're the first one to live long enough with evidence. Turns out, she'd seen the same signs I did. She tried to raise red flags. Got pushed into early retirement. But she kept watching. Kept digging. She handed me a portable body cam. Start recording. Everything. Never turn it off. Not even in your sleep. I did exactly that. Over the next few weeks, we became ghosts, haunting the precinct without being seen. We tracked suspicious cases handled by SHIELD 45 officers. We found a disturbing number of parallels. Recovered weapons mysteriously had no fingerprints. Victims were disproportionately black or Latino. Body cams conveniently malfunctioned at critical moments. Testimony from junior officers vanished or was never submitted. And the scariest part? Every complaint had been reviewed and cleared by a panel including Turner. One name kept coming up, Captain Rourke. He'd overseen SHIELD 45 for years. Ran the department like a plantation, rewarding loyalty, punishing dissent. He signed off on every report that covered for Turner and his crew. We had to get to him. Or through him. Then came a break. One of the newer rookies, Officer Elijah Hart, approached me in secret. Said he'd seen Turner dump something into an evidence locker after hours. The same night of Jennings' murder. I didn't say anything because, man, I'm scared. Hart whispered, eyes darting. But I saw you with Alvarez once. She told me you weren't what they said. I believe her. That night, I snuck into the locker room. Found the evidence tag. It had been logged under a completely unrelated case. A domestic assault that never happened. The weapon tag matched the Glock found at the scene. I recorded everything. With Elkins guiding me via earpiece, I downloaded the logs, photographed the chain of custody, and backed it up in 4 places: cloud, flash drive, burner phone, and a mailed USB to a journalist I once saved from a robbery. Just in case. Then it happened. 2 officers in SHIELD 45 cornered me in a parking garage after one of my late-night stakeouts. They didn't say a word. Just tried to put me on the ground. But I wasn't new to this. I fought like hell. One ended up with a broken wrist. The other ran off limping. My ribs were cracked, but I had the whole thing on the body cam. Maria patched me up. Quietly. No ER. No records. We've got what we need, she said. Now let's break them. I leaked the warehouse footage. The logs. The manipulated weapon tag. The corrupt chain of command. Sent it all anonymously to a journalist I trusted. A woman named Kadia Owens. Black, brilliant, relentless. The kind of voice that couldn't be ignored anymore. Within 48 hours, the city was on fire. SHIELD 45, racist cop ring exposed. Framed and betrayed. Black officer fights back. Body cam proves Officer Cole innocent. Officials under investigation. People took to the streets. The media flooded precinct steps. Internal Affairs opened a federal case. Turner was suspended. Rourke disappeared. But me? I was silent. Watching. Waiting. Because the game wasn't over yet. Not until the last lie burned. And the truth? It was finally catching fire. But fire, even righteous fire, is dangerous. I knew exposing SHIELD 45 would shake the system. What I didn't expect was how fast the cracks would widen. Or how loud the silence would become once people started choosing sides. The morning after the story broke, my phone rang nonstop. Reporters, podcast hosts, lawyers, activists. Everyone wanted a soundbite, a statement, a face. But I wasn't interested in being a martyr. I just wanted justice. I ignored the noise and turned my focus to the next move. Maria and I had more. More names. More footage. More lies. And we were going to use it all. Within a week, Internal Affairs, now with federal oversight, opened a full investigation into Precinct 87. Every case involving Turner and the SHIELD 45 crew was reopened. Files were pulled. Witnesses re-interviewed. Evidence retested. And the dominoes started falling. First was Officer Blake, one of the 2 who jumped me in the garage. He tried to deny it. Claimed he hadn't seen me in weeks. That's when I sent Internal Affairs the full body cam clip. High def, crystal clear, complete with his boot print on my chest. He flipped fast. Told them everything. Named names. Gave dates. Confirmed the existence of a loyalty group that operated off the record. In return, he begged for immunity. Then came the real prize, a burner phone. Elijah Hart found it in the squad room ceiling during a janitor rotation. He turned it over to Maria and me, too scared to keep it himself. On it, text threads, photos, videos. including one voice memo I'll never forget. Cole's getting too close. He ain't like the others. Either we pin him for something, or he's gonna get one of us canned. If he goes down, we're covered. You know how this works. Turner's voice. Clear as day. No denying it. We released the tape. Within hours, Turner was arrested. Not suspended. Arrested. Charged with obstruction, conspiracy, tampering with evidence, and accessory to murder. Jennings' death was reopened as a homicide. And for the first time in months, I breathed. But justice is never clean. Because the system doesn't like to be embarrassed. The mayor's office issued a statement praising the investigation, but refused to acknowledge systemic failure. The chief stepped down for personal reasons. And Captain Rourke? He vanished. Internal Affairs claimed he was on medical leave. But I'd seen him the week before, tailing me in a black SUV. He knew it was over. But he wasn't going to surrender quietly. Then came the wildest part of all. The public didn't just get mad. They got involved. Community organizers launched a petition to have every case involving Shield 45 reviewed. Hundreds of cases were reopened. Dozens of victims, mostly Black and Latino men, had their records expunged. Some walked out of prison for the first time in years. They reached out to me, thanked me, called me a hero. But I wasn't a hero. I was a man who'd been pushed to the edge and refused to fall. Internal Affairs offered me my badge back. Clean record. New start. Even hinted at a promotion. I stared at the folder on the table, crisp and heavy with the illusion of justice. But something inside me shifted. I thought of Jennings. Of how fast they painted me guilty. I thought of every time I smiled through a racist joke. Of every time I was told to be the bigger man. I pushed the folder back. No thanks, I said. I'm not going back to fix a house that was never built for me in the first place. Instead, I took the media's fire and used it. With Maria and Elijah's help, I started something new. The Cole Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to helping officers of color who are targeted, harassed, or framed by their own departments. Within 3 months, we had over 200 open inquiries. The people weren't just listening. They were moving. And as for me, I started telling the story. In podcasts, in interviews, in classrooms, on the streets. Not just my story, our story. Because this wasn't about me anymore. It was about every cop who had to be twice as good to get half as far. Every rookie who sat silent while racism smiled in a badge. Every man who learned that sometimes the most dangerous uniform in the room was worn by the people you called brother. And the final nail in the coffin? Captain Rourke, untouchable, powerful, smug, was found dead in a federal holding facility. Prison shower. No cameras. The official cause was suicide. Unofficially, no one cried. The headlines were sterile. Retired police captain found dead in custody. They buried it on page 5. But everyone in Precinct 87 knew what it meant. The king had fallen. And the rest of the kingdom was now fair game. The federal investigation exploded in the days that followed Rourke's suicide. Turner, already in custody, suddenly wasn't so confident. His lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, claiming Turner could name every member of Shield 45 still active. He gave up 3 sergeants, 2 captains, and a deputy chief. He painted them as masterminds. Said he had no choice. Coward. He never once mentioned Jennings. Never once admitted pulling the trigger. But that didn't matter anymore. The ball was rolling, and this time, it wasn't going to stop. The DOJ sent in a federal task force. They called it a full systemic audit. Every department Turner and Rourke touched was combed through. Files once marked confidential were cracked open like eggs. Dozens of convictions tied to Shield 45 officers were overturned. Lawsuits poured in. Class action suits followed. The city tried to settle, but the damage was done. People wanted names. They wanted blood. And they weren't wrong. Because for years, that precinct wasn't just corrupt, it was predatory. They didn't just lie and plant evidence. They hunted. And they did it under the color of law. One officer fled the country. Another turned up in his garage, engine running, windows sealed. 2 more were arrested trying to destroy documents from an off-site storage facility in the suburbs. And then there was Alvarez. Detective Rosa Alvarez, the only one who brought me groceries when everyone else turned their backs. She stepped forward, publicly, blew the whistle, gave IA everything she'd collected over the years. Tapes, logs, her own testimony. She became the public face of everything they tried to hide. She got death threats. But she also got applause. Standing ovations at City Hall. They called her brave. But I just called her honest. Meanwhile, the Cole Initiative became more than a support center. It became a movement. With the help of a few dedicated lawyers, we created a review board, independent from the department, fueled by community donations. We offered aid to wrongly accused officers, provided legal representation, held town halls where people could finally speak about what they'd endured, without fear. And when the mayor tried to discredit us, I stood at the podium, held up my badge, and dropped it in the dirt in front of City Hall. I wore this with pride, I said, until it tried to kill me. Then came the most unexpected twist of all. The president's office issued a statement commending our efforts. The DOJ launched a nationwide task force to investigate similar corruption rings. Other cities, Chicago, Atlanta, San Diego, reached out to our board for guidance. Suddenly, the story of Darius Cole wasn't just about revenge. It was about reform, about rising from the ashes of betrayal and turning pain into power. But let me tell you what satisfied me most. It wasn't the arrests. It wasn't the headlines. It wasn't even the medals or the speeches. It was walking into my old precinct one last time. Same locker room, same tiled floors, same peeling paint. I walked past the new recruits, past the empty desk that used to belong to Turner. And then I walked into the briefing room. I didn't say a word, just stood there, watching the officers fall silent, one by one. Some looked away, some held my gaze. And in that moment, I knew. They didn't fear me because I was angry. They feared me because I won. And they should. Because when a man loses everything, his name, his badge, his reputation, he either breaks or becomes something stronger. I became fire. After that final walk through the precinct, I never stepped foot in a squad car again. Not in uniform, anyway. I wasn't a cop anymore. I was a builder, a founder, a survivor. And I had work to do. The Cole Initiative exploded across the country. What started as a small office with a borrowed desk and a cracked coffee maker turned into a national network of support and resistance. We expanded into 14 states, brought on psychologists, civil rights attorneys, retired detectives, and community advocates. We trained new officers on how to survive racism in the system, but also how to dismantle it. We built bridges, and we burned the ones that led back to corruption. I gave talks at universities, testified before Congress. And each time, I told them what no one else would say out loud. The badge didn't protect me. The system didn't fail me. It targeted me. And if it could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. I still carried my body cam. Not out of fear, but as a symbol. Proof that we shouldn't have to defend our innocence. But until the system stopped treating us as suspects, we'd come armed. With facts, with footage, with fury. I started recording a podcast, Behind the Badge. Not stories of glory. Stories of survival. Real stories. From black cops who were told they didn't fit the culture. From Latino officers pressured to ignore IC abuses. From Asian officers silenced when they reported harassment. From women who were never allowed to just be officers. One story, one episode, one voice at a time, we rewrote the narrative. Not all cops are bad, but too many good ones are destroyed before they ever have a chance to make it right. Then, one cold December morning, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single photo. Me, standing next to Jennings. Both of us younger, arms around each other, smiling. Back before the poison took over. On the back, in faded ink, it read, "He used to believe in you." So did I? I'm sorry. No name. Just pain. Maybe from his sister. Or his kid. I don't know. But I kept that photo. Because even in all this, I needed to remember that not every loss was justice. Some were just loss. A year after the first arrest, I stood on a stage, looking out at a crowd of thousands. They weren't clapping for me. They were clapping for what we had all become. Survivors. Fighters. Builders of something better. I told them. They tried to bury me. But I wasn't a seed. I was a storm. And I didn't grow. I burned. And in that crowd, a young black recruit. Wide-eyed. Nervous. Hopeful. I caught his gaze. He nodded once. Firm. Defiant. Brave. And in that single look, I saw the future. Not a perfect one, but one we'd earned. One they couldn't erase. One where we write the story.